Inside the last 24 minutes of the SportsMax Zone for this Friday, we're continuing with football. 2019 research from Scotland's Glasgow University concluded that former professional footballers are 3.5 times more likely to die of dementia than people of the same age range in the general population. This study is being brought back to the forefront following the revelation that Sir Bobby Charlton, one of England's 1966 World Cup heroes and also Ballon d'Or winner of that year, is suffering from dementia. Last month, another of the England 1966 World Cup winners, Nobby Stiles, died after battling dementia and prostate cancer. And now Geoff Hurst, another of the England 1966 World Cup stars, says it is more than coincidence, this link between heading and dementia.
Practicing heading a ball, swinging from the ceiling. We'd play head tennis in the gym, and then you get onto the field and you practice what we were well known for at West Ham, of course, was the near post crosses, near post headers, from which we scored a goal in the quarter-final in the World Cup. The practice we did with that, which could be 20 minutes, half an hour. So the enormous amount of practice heading the ball probably is more detrimental to players than probably in a match.
So Sir Geoff Hurst plans on donating his brain for dementia research. The Chief Medical Officer at FIFPro, the World Players Union, Dr. Vincent Gottebarge, says there is not enough evidence of a direct link between repeated heading and dementia to impose restrictions at the top level. Here's what the medical chief said: as long as we do not have the scientific evidence to change things in a legitimate way, then there is no reason to change. We need to have more robust evidence in order to make a decision. I know in the UK you have referred to the very good study from Professor Willie Stewart, but I looked at the study again this morning and I didn't see the words heading or concussion mentioned one time in this study. But this hasn't stopped Chelsea's manager Frank Lampard from considering to restrict heading in training. And former Manchester United player and the EPL's second highest goal scorer Wayne Rooney is backing the idea of limiting heading in training. To add to the discussion, we are being joined by former TNT international Brent Sancho. Brent, welcome to the SportsMax Zone on this issue. You were a top central defender in your playing days, not only for TNT and in TNT, but also in Scotland and the USA. I would suspect that a central defender, Brent Sancho, heads the football more often than midfielders and attacking players on a football field. What's your take on this story?
Well, good afternoon, Lance, and of course, Leighton and my good friend Dino, hey, and Brent. Of course, the rest of the listeners and viewers. It is a contentious one, of course, as you rightfully would have mentioned, as a former defender. Yes, I have used my head a lot in terms of it. Some of it, obviously, it depends on where you played. For example, in Scotland, in the UK, where the game is a little bit more direct, of course. The way the game's evolved the way it is now. I would say this much: I think at the end of the day, if there's even a remote chance that there's evidence that there is a linkage, I think the governing powers and the governing bodies need to do everything in their power to get to the bottom of it, to make sure that there is a complete scientific conclusion that they can rule this out. I agree with both with Frankie Lampard and of course Wayne Rooney that they can do their part from a practice perspective. In of course, limiting the amount of the use of the head. But I think it's really down to the governing body now, guys, for them to really go in and do the proper scientific research to come up with a conclusion.
Yeah, the fact is, Brent, that based on what we have just heard, they are suggesting, or at least the first step would be to limit what you do in training, because obviously you wouldn't want to change the complexion of football and the culture of football by bringing any kind of restriction in a match situation, would it?
Yeah, and look, I agree with that. And as I alluded to in the beginning, when I played to what football is now, it has been a complete change. I played both in Scotland and England. And when you look at the type of games, the type and the way football is being approached from a tactical perspective, a lot of teams try to put the ball down on the floor and play a bit more. As I said, when I played, it was a bit more direct. It's not that way anymore. It's changed a bit. But that being said, in the training, etc., if you can limit it there, of course, the game is something separate and apart. You cannot dictate what a game would unfold into. But if you can, of course, limit it at the practice level, I think they're heading in the right direction. I remember when I was leading up to the 2006 World Cup, Peter Cech's company that supplied him with the headgear came to the Trinidad and Tobago football camp and offered all the players a little sum of money to wear that headgear. Obviously, most of the players back then, inclusive of myself, was looking more at the fashion perspective of it and didn't want to wear it. But that you know, as in that sense, we can see the evolution and where it started and where this is heading.
Brent, the PFA, I read an article in the Atlantic saying that the PFA has already asked clubs to minimize heading in training. In terms of the game itself, though, given, as you mentioned, there are some teams that are a lot more direct, does that then impact how teams play in the future if this is the case? Because if you're not able to practice crosses, headers from corners, free kicks, where the ball is aerial more than anything else, it's more effective in the air. Do you see the possibility where this then changes the way teams play?
To be honest, I think the way teams play is already changing. I think many of the modern day coaches prefer to play a more passing and possession type based football and not be as direct. You would struggle to see any major teams in Europe that don't play the ball along the ground. I think the reason why they have, of course, honed into the practice, you can control practice sessions. As I said, when I played, we had several sessions where you head the ball more than probably what you would do in a game. And so if a coach or a manager could, of course, temper that situation, it would make it, of course, it would help in terms of the discussion that we're having. As I've said, there's some positions on the field, as Lance would have alluded to at the start of this conversation, that you just can't get away from it. For example, as a centre half, you do, of course, have to face quite a bit of flighted balls in the air, and you do have to head the ball as in relation to a midfield player. But you can't change that because obviously you cannot dictate or say during the course of the game that you can't use your head. That's all part and parcel of the sport. But in a training session, for sure, you can temper it and taper it to make sure that you have less impact with the head.
There's another question I want to ask you. Really, the inconclusive nature of the study. Age, alcohol abuse, and also lifestyle have a lot to do with those suffering from dementia. How then can you separate those who are, using their head in football? Let's just say, for example, back in the day of 1966, footballers would drink a lot, and they lived very abusive lifestyles. How do we know? I mean, how can we be clear as to whether or not those were the contributing factors and not heading the ball?
I think one of the reasons, and you are going along a trajectory that is correct. I think obviously the modern day professional in 1966 is a lot different from the modern day footballer in 2020. I know for a fact that modern day footballers now weigh what they eat. They're very health conscious. Of course, when you look at the likes of a Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, they pay a lot of attention to their body and how the scientific approach to the sport. There's also as well, Leighton, the question of the type of ball that was used back in those days. It was a heavier ball, a leather ball that, of course, would weigh a bit more than the current ball that they use now. So you do have to, of course, look at all these variant factors, lifestyle, as you mentioned, etc. But I think if they can hone in on the fact that the head aspect of it, the heading of the football, if scientists, I'm very sure they can hone into that particular side of things, I do believe they can get a bit more precise in their diagnosis. I personally believe that there is something there, particularly when you look at, of course, what has transpired over the last couple of months and even what has transpired over the last couple of years.
All right, Brent, we're going to leave it there. I think you've got to thank Peter Crouch, though, for making or preventing you from at least one more header in your playing career, because you were about to go for the header. He grabbed onto your locks and pulled you out of the way. So that's one less header for Brent Sancho in international football.
Well, I'll have to thank him if I live an extra 5 years that I'm supposed to. So I'll definitely thank him for that.
Thanks, Brent. Good talking to you as usual. Tino, your quick thoughts on this one, because it would change the complexion of certainly a training regime for these footballers if they were limited to heading the ball in training.
Yeah, I think Brent went back on a point, and you both of y'all mentioned it as well. The lifestyle of a professional cricketer, of a footballer.
We understand, Tino.
The lifestyle of a professional footballer back in the 60s. I mean, look, one of my favorite footballers was George Best. You saw the lifestyle that a guy like George Best would have done or went through. I think it's all about more health and wealth and fitness and the way you eat now. I never heard about a footballer like having real bad injuries unless he collided together with another player. They need to find more evidence that stakes this. And if they don't find that evidence, then you can't limit it in practice. You got to practice it.
Yes.
And also the ball is a different ball too as well.
Yes.
So look,
I remember those balls had laces. They actually had laces. Balls in the 60s and early 70s.
And they were heavy when they got wet.
Yeah.
Correct. So if you don't have any science to back it up, I don't think that they should stop going head in the ball. I think it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Tino, you just touched on lifestyle and nutrition and so on. There's a little feature we wanted to do on how you eat and how you take care of yourself. I'm not sure if time will allow it to allow it today, but it's something I think our viewers will be very interested in as we look at Tino Best and his lifestyle. Let's move quickly to horse racing. A jockey who fought back from a head-on car crash, a spinal fracture and neck injuries has denied the great Frankie Dettori a £250,000 first place prize in a dramatic photo finish. Scotland-born Lee Newman used a 20-to-1 shot Sincere to fend off a late burst by the legendary rider Dettori to narrowly win the Bahrain International Trophy earlier on Friday. Here's how that exciting race went.
And they're racing down towards the final 400, and it is Sincere and Lee Newman who have gone to the lead and have gone clear. Cooler Forest is in second, now Bangkok in third, Port Lions down the outside. Here comes Global Giant, he's eating up ground, but he's running out of time. It is still Sincere and Lee Newman in second. It's Global Giant, Sovereign and then Port Lions racing up towards the line. Sincere, Global Giant, and they hit the line together. Very, very tight. Sincere over on the far side. On the near side was Global Giant. Sovereign was between them. Port Lions and then Lord Glitters the Grey flew very late. Deirdre never got to them. Neither two did Loxley, and the rest trail into the likes of Desert Encounter and the early leader Cooler Forest. It is a 3-horse photo at the end of the second running of the Bahrain International, but it is on that evidence a shock as Sincere and Lee Newman have taken the scalps of Global Giant and